keep working together. Do not come off it. Always the standards. Always set the standards.
Since I've been here. It's not the result, it's me. That's me, the board. So all we can do as a team is win games and try to improve and develop and win. And that's what the team have done. So the team and ourselves, the staff, we work very hard every day, so we're very much together. And that's how we'll continue to be. And if it falls below the expectation, then we'll do everything we can to be better.
All that and much more as well, I'm sure. Good evening, folks, and welcome along to the Endless Celts Podcast. This is a Monday night show. I'm Anthony, and the host chair tonight. I've been joined by my namesake, Anthony, and also one of the OGs of the Endless Celts podcast, and Franny as well. How you both doing, boys?
All good, Tony, all good. Pleasure to be here as always. I think there's a fair few things to talk about tonight then, aye?
Very much so, mate. As I say, some of it on the park, well, if we can call it the park after, as I say, it looked like more like the Glastonbury Fields on a Sunday afternoon. But yeah, and of course, plenty off the pitch stuff to chat about as well, mate. So we'll get stuck into it. And what about yourself, Franny?
Aye, all good, Anthony, all good. I was actually fortunate enough to be at the football at the weekend as we were talking off air, so I'm looking forward to getting into it.
No, absolutely. We'll get stuck into all that and more. Just before we go into the next bit, Franny, do we have the Super 6 results for the weekend?
Wait, there, where is it? I had it somewhere. There we are.
There we go, indeed. So Alistair Jack, he seems to be sort of pulling away a wee bit at the top there, although Kieran Gilhooly's had a good week. He's back in the mix, 282. Robertson, Stephen Colcart, Joe Finlay. I'm kind of falling down the pecking order. I'm never good when it comes to the FA Cup rounds. Always seem to get it wrong. And there we go, Kevin Hampsey, Ryan Taylor, and Franny, you and Wally, position 9 and 10. So there's still a few of us in there, but Alistair is still leading the pack. But still a long way to go in the season. But yeah, he's doing great at the moment. So boys, we'll get stuck right into it. Before we talk about the actual match itself, obviously, Franny, Saturday's match was another milestone in the long, illustrious career of Callum McGregor at Celtic so far. Man made his 450th appearance for the club on Saturday, in which he did what he usually does. He captained his side to a victory in the league. But before we sort of pay tribute to him, Willie, our resident tech guy, it seems nowadays, he's the TikTok whiz kid, has put together a wee sort of package just to kind of sum up his time at Celtic. So I'll let you take it away.
What an amazing player. Wow. You should be so proud of that kid. Able to come back and have him as my captain, I'm very, very lucky. Just an absolutely brilliant player on a different level, with the greatest respect to everyone else on the pitch.
together. Do not come off it. Always the standards. Always set the standards.
What you have to do at this football club, you know, it doesn't matter how much you win. The next year you come back and you got zero credit in the bank, you got to start again, and that's what this football club is about, is delivering success for the supporters.
Absolutely superb stuff. Well put together from Willie. Yeah, absolutely, Pam. I think Marvel are going to be headhunting him for the next Avengers film at this rate. He's doing absolutely brilliant. Evening, Alistair, the league leader in the Super Six there. And welcome along to everybody else in the comments as well, whether you be new or old to the channel. We hope you enjoy it tonight. And so, Franny, unbelievable. 450 appearances now for Cal McGregor in his trophy-laden career at Celtic. Just looking at some of his stats, he's got 8 SPL titles, 5 Scottish Cups, 7 League Cups, and 41 goals in amongst those 450 appearances. You tend to run out of superlatives to give the man, because especially Willie put that package together there and used the term captain, leader, legend, which was of course the titles awarded to his predecessor in the role, Scott Brown, and obviously he left a huge hole, or we thought that was going to be the case when he moved on after the COVID season, and we were looking like perhaps a bit bereft of leadership. But Cal McGregor's taken that role, made it his own, and he's just following on from where Scott Brown left off.
He hasn't half. I wouldn't say. I don't know what to say too much in case because you can always go back. I can't remember if I said him for captain or if I thought how he would perform under the role. I think he's surprised me how well he's performed under the role, Anthony, how he just seems to have grew as a man, grew as a player. It just shows you the influence he's got in the team and stuff, how he's how he seems to be able to. He's maybe not as vocal as Scott Brown was, and that's sometimes what you need is not the exact same voice after Scott Brown being the captain for so well for so long. Sometimes you just need a different change, and Cal McGregor has to be his own captain, has to be his own man within that role, and you see he possibly does it more through his performances, how he kind of leads, for example, and things like that. You do see these speeches there and things like that. You've also got the wee things with Barris. It's that one where he's calling them a shite bags. That'll be just that'll get shown and sort of repeat for years and years to come. But I mean, I've said that in the podcast tons of times. I think Callum McGregor is head and shoulders above anybody in this league. Not currently. Matt Riley, no denying Matt Riley's the best player in the league currently. But I just think ability-wise, Callum McGregor for me could play with anybody in world football. And folk might say I'm biased, folk can cover it. I just think the boy is absolute top. I think he's a top player. There's not enough you can say about the guy. Honestly, there isn't.
He really is, mate. He's fantastic ambassador for Celtic as a whole. But of course, it's all about other things as well as that. Anthony, and of course, one of them is leading a Celtic side to success. And of course, in the time he's been here, he's lifted 5 trophies as captain already, but was an integral part of the quadruple treble winning team before it, and obviously was just sort of on the fringes of the team under Ronnie Dyla as well. So and I still believe, I don't think he's actually lost a final that he's competed in at Hampden either. He just seems to have a real taste for success.
He does. We spoke about it a couple of weeks ago on the podcast as well. When you look at the success that trios of 3 midfielders, and you look at the likes of Brownie beforehand with him as a captain, and now McGregor, he's been integral in the last decade of all of Celtic's success, and we can attribute a lot of that to Brown, and we can say that Brown's going to be arguably one of, if not the most decorated captain that we've had, and McGregor won't reach that standard by default of not being captain for that length of time, but he still won all those trebles. He was integral throughout the entire, well, not the entire, but most of that, sorry, I said 10, most of the 9 in a row seasons, and then obviously continuing that success onwards when he took over the reins as captain. I can't believe at the time people actually doubted if he could be a success to Scott Brown. I mean, 2 years later, you're thinking, who else would you have accepted as captain? Because he stepped up to that mantle, and then some. He's continued the winning success and tradition. He's got his own treble under his belt as captain. He's got his own league titles as well. He's got to hopefully get another league title this year as well. And he deserves all the plaudits and all the credit that he gets, because he's a fantastic player. He does a lot of dirty work that kind of goes unseen sometimes, but on the ball, a technically great quality player. He would not look at a place in any Celtic side that I've seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think as well, obviously in the little video package there, obviously 2 other men stood out in it for me. Obviously, Brendan saying, I think that was the comments after the Derby win just there after Christmas, where he says, with all due respect, he's the best player on the pitch out there by some distance. But obviously, as well, when he was given the captaincy, just as Ange Postecoglou was taken over, and obviously he had that famous quote where he says, well, the ultimate sort of tribute he can pay to Callum McGregor is that the sort of changing room is kind of his domain. Up at Lennoxtown, Ange himself never used to going to the players' changing room, he just sort of felt that was the captain's domain. He put that level of trust in him to take care, be his man in the changing room essentially. And well, clearly the message worked with 5 trophies out of a possible 6 in the time that Ange was there. He's a phenomenal servant to Celtic, and hopefully there's a lot of gas left in the tank yet, because he certainly seems to be in the mood for more success. But Franny, I'm going to come back to you because if and as Anthony says, hopefully that next success will be a league championship in the springtime. Goes without saying that we can't win every week 6-0. But of those 450 appearances that Callum's made, I don't think Saturday's going to be making his greatest hits DVD when he does eventually hang up his boots.
No, I think if we do go on to win the league, I think Saturday it'll just be sort of a race for the memory. I don't think it's not one we'll look back to and go, it was a turning moment, but it was a terrible game, Anthony. But it's weird because he scored the penalty, then Bernardo scores that chance that he should score. It's a total different game they're talking about at the end of the day. I think it is fine margins, but it's one of the ones as well where you're looking at it going, you've got off to the perfect start, obviously a perfect start against any opponent that you scored that early. But certainly a team like Ross County who aren't playing well, their manager's telling everybody they're not playing well. He hates the league, he hates being here. So it's to kind of sort of chuck their game plan out in the bin straight away. It's a perfect start, but it was just those like the Bernardo chance. The guy's been on great form. You expect him to stick it away. Palmer's penalty. I fully expect him to stick the first one away, but
plural.
It was the second one, the retake. I'm sitting going, wee bit of me was just sitting thinking, I think he's missing this again. It's not to sound clever or anything. There was just a wee feeling going, wouldn't it surprise me if he misses this year? And it just, I think after, I'm trying to remember if Bernardo's chance was after that or not. I think it was before it. And I just think I wouldn't say that sucked the life out of us or anything, but it certainly gave Ross County a wee bit of belief that there might be something in this today for us. Because I think for there, the crowd got on their back. It was just, it was a strange day. Like, we did have chances equally. They had chances. Obviously, David Turnbull came on, and it's a guy I've stuck up for, but oh my God, he was terrible. He caused more damage than what he did when he came on the park. I thought he gave the ball away so many times. I just felt it was just a strange game that ended. We spoke about it before we came on, Anthony, how about the booing and stuff. We'll probably get into that, like that. Just weirdly how that felt like a near inevitability that there was going to be some sort of reaction after it. But it's just, it was weird because you go back to, I think it was run about this, well, no, it was a wee bit later on this season, maybe it was run about this time, 2 years ago in Angie's first season, up at Ross County, funny enough. You score a last minute goal. Wasn't it a great game that day? And I just think this whole, there's clearly a lot going on in the background. There's a lot of unrest within the fan base and things like that. There's no denying that. But if that goal was in the last minute, I think you're looking at this a totally different way. I might be wrong. I just think you're looking at this a totally different way if that's a last minute goal as opposed to a first minute goal.
Yeah, it's a fair point, mate. And obviously we will go on to the sort of unrest, to be, for want of a better word, Anthony, later on in the show. But I suppose if you're going to try to put a positive spin on it, and again, hello to everyone in the comments, like Franny's bringing a few of them up now. Of course, all teams, Anthony, whether it be Celtic or any other successful side, especially a side that's had a continued period of success, there's always going to be days where you have times like this happening. Now, we are aware that this is not just a single one-off game. This has probably been a culmination of different factors The one thing you can say to put a positive spin on it, that at least if you're going to be going through periods like this, if you're still putting the 3 points on the board, yes, we had to huff and puff to do so, but you'd rather win your way through adversity than drop any further points like we did earlier on in the campaign.
Yeah, definitely true. And I'm going to try to be careful not to delve into the conversations that we're probably going to have in the later half of the podcast itself. On the game itself, though, I would somewhat disagree with Franny a little bit, in the sense that if we scored that goal in the last minute, would it be a different atmosphere, a different feeling? Would we be booing them at the end of it? Something? Maybe not booing them because the relief would be there so soon, but I think the feeling that it was a terrible game, to have scored so early, then not have done anything really throughout the game, or to have done nothing throughout the game and get the last minute goal. I think the frustration would still be there. And I think the players themselves on the day need to take a proper look at themselves. We could talk about how it's not a settled 11 all season practically. He's not found his best 11. He's had a lot of injuries and so forth. But the players are still professional. They're still the best players in this entire league. And then some, especially when you come up against Ross County. So I expect the performance, as much as I'm going to get into it later on, is tell you that it's other people's fault to begin with. I think the performance from the players still needs to be better on the day.
Yeah, I think that's fair. As well, that it seemed very lackluster at times, for want of a better word. And obviously, perhaps certain conditions was part of that, and obviously we'll discuss that as well. One of the questions that we were wanting answered, and we got that before the game, Anthony, I'll just come straight back to you, was, of course, the boys were chatting at great length on Friday night, just with the unfortunate injury to Greg Taylor and everything that comes with. How would Brendan set up at the back? Was there the chance of Alexander Bernaby stepping in, perhaps Liam Scales moving over to left back, and for another centre half to start in his place next to CCV, who was also declared fit? There was even the possibility of a back three as well. All these different opportunities were discussed, but as we found out about an hour before kickoff, it was pretty much a like for like, a left back for a left back, and the forgotten man, you could almost say, Alexander Bernaby, made a start, and have to say, started absolutely brilliantly. Putting that ball across, getting beyond his marker, putting the ball in that caused so much confusion in the county area that led to the goal. I wouldn't say, I don't think there can be anyone that then say he went on to have a man of the match performance, or that he was absolutely dreadful and a liability and nearly cost us the game either. He was probably somewhere in between, perhaps a 5.5, 6 out of 10. I think we're all agreed that he's not an answer long term, but from Brendan being that has been his first choice, going to just a like for like swap, can you see Bernaby, unless somebody comes in, which we do think is unlikely at left back, can you see Bernaby just sort of filling in that slot until such time Greg Taylor returns?
Don't know. Is the honest answer. As you started that, Tony, yourself, we were discussing, the guys were discussing on Friday night, who was it going to be? Scales moves over. Was it going to be Bernaby? Was it going to be a back three? Hell, we've even seen Tony Ralston play at left back earlier this season when he came off the bench one time. The fact that we're 4 days before the end of January when that game kicks off, and we were not even aware of what possibly could be the fallback to if Greg Taylor was injured, that tells you that if we can't figure that out, the manager can't figure it out, that just tells you the kind of issues we have at the club. As for Bernaby himself, I think you're spot on. He didn't have his worst performance, and he certainly probably didn't have his best. But I like the fact that he did start. I've got a soft spot for him for all the wrong reasons, probably because he is really not good defensively. But I think he had a fair game in the grand scheme of the rest of the team. Wasn't the greatest either. And for me, I would like to see him start the next game or two. Again, assuming that we're not going to sign anybody else apart from some over-the-hill EPL has been on loan probably. I would like to see Bernaby get a couple of games, because I think he maybe doesn't deserve it, but he might need a run to at least show himself or show the manager if he can get a run of 3-4 games, will he actually step it up and actually push on a wee bit, or is he going to be this forever? They've got a man who pops up every 10 or so games, does a performance, then disappears into nothing again.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, obviously, that he is his poor timekeeping. Obviously, didn't get off on the right track with Brendan at the best of times, and obviously Greg Taylor kept him out the team last season under Ange. Sorry, Anthony, I'm just going to come straight back to you. Then I'm over to you, Franny. After that, I just want to get your views on this as well. Obviously, as Pam has alluded to in the chat, Stephen is a big fan of Bernabei. But one of the things that, and again, it was a testimonial, so you can only attribute so much credit to a testimonial match. But when he was playing in James Forrest's game, it was just before the start of the season. He actually, I can't remember if it was him that scored the winning goal or it was him that set it up, but it was the discussion around that time was the way that he played in that second half, that perhaps he was more suited to the sort of way that Brendan wanted to play. And we actually thought, Stephen even made the prediction at that point that he thought he would then go on to be the first choice left back this season. Obviously, the next day at training, he slept in, and the rest is history. But if he gets that, if like you say, you probably already answered it to an extent. But if you were the manager now, going on the back of Saturday, would you be inclined to say, okay, Pittodrie, Easter Road, and perhaps the next few games beyond, you're like letting them know right now you're going to be in the team, so be ready for it, so to speak?
Yeah, he has to kind of like on different circumstances, but kind of like with Bernardo as well in the festive period. He's going to have to give these players this run of games to let them settle. He had to let Bernardo settle leading up to the Derby game, and then Bernardo came good with it, and he's reaping the benefits just now for 5-6 games in a row. And we're all thinking Bernardo actually could be signed permanently for next season, actually fit in quite well. Is Bernabei going to be similar? Probably not. But he needs that run of games to see if he can, because at this stage we're not getting a left back, so we have to make do with what we've got inevitably, and we can't keep persisting with Greg Taylor forever because he gets injured now. So we need to do something, and I'd rather see one person get a fair shot than we start putting Scales at left back where he's actually probably better at centre back, or start putting Ralston there, or 3 at the back, or whatever we end up with. I'd rather just give Bernabei, give him the shot. As Boise brought up as well, do I want to give a guy who doesn't deserve it and is also defensively not very good at a shot? No, really. I want us to go out and sign a left back that's on a par with Kieran Tierney at least, but we're not going to do that, so I have to make do with what we've got. And for just now, I think I want to see what Bernabei's got. How bad could it be, really? Yeah,
that's a fair. Well, hopefully the answer isn't too disastrous, but I totally take your points on board. Franny, I know you've been sitting out there for a while. Apologies for that. No. What was your own thoughts when you were heading through? I know you and Jed were sitting together on Saturday. You were along at the match, and obviously you would have heard the team news coming through. Is that what you would have A, expected, B, wanted? What did you think of his performance, and also as well, what would you say about in terms of going forward? Would you start him, or if the power was in your hands, would you go for an alternative option?
I honestly don't know. It was what I expected, in the sense that who else have we got to put in? I can't see that Mitchell Frame getting a start. He obviously came on the Champions League and has not been seen since. I don't even think he made the squad for Bucky Thistle. So I was glad to an extent that he played, because it meant it kept Liam Scales at centre half. I think Liam Scales just came out and said that left centre half's his favoured position. So I don't see why this clamour to move him out of where he's been playing so well to go to left back. Liam Scales is arguably our best centre half this season. And so I've never understood that argument to take him out of there and put him left back. So at one hand, I was like, well, at least we've got a natural left back in there, if you can call him that. But maybe I'm a wee bit blinkered when it comes to Bernabei. I thought he was rank. He gave the ball away about 3 times and could just try to clip up the line and stuff. And you're just like, and at times I don't. It feels like he's playing playground football because I just feel like it chases after the ball and just gets attracted to the football and just runs and runs after the ball. He looks like an absolute failed winger. It might be. I can even claim after what's he been here a year and a half. He can't be struggling to maybe adapt to the lifestyle that sort of the culture and things. I think it's Burnaby's for me will just never do. The fact that Greg Taylor, like taking on away for Greg Taylor, he's obviously performing well enough to stay in the team, but Greg Taylor's no missed a minute of football, and God knows, well, obviously apart from the weekend, God knows how long. And Burnaby, like you sometimes see rotation. Ange obviously rotated the team a wee bit. It's just they're not getting tried on. Like didn't even get a game against Bucky Thistle. That for me just tells you all you need to know about Burnaby. I do think if we don't get a left back in, I do think he'll start. I don't see any reason why you put Scales out to left back, but it might just do it. But it actually worries me the next 3 games with Burnaby potentially being a left back. I wanted to give the guy a chance when he came in because I was on the sort of a trainee. We need to replace Greg Taylor. I still believe we certainly need to get somebody in to challenge Greg Taylor, if nothing else, because that simply could all be. Maybe Greg Taylor's got a wee bit complacent and thought, well, I don't really need to do much to keep my place here. I don't think he is. He needs challenged. He needs challenged that position. For me, Burnaby is never the answer to that.
No,
See
it's
all
fair enough,
these.
mate. Fair enough.
See all
Go-
these
go on, Ian, go,
unanswered questions that we've got here, like Burnaby's not really an answer, Greg Taylor needs somebody to challenge, me wanting a run of games even though I don't think he's very fucking good in the first place. See all this nonsense that we're talking about, and I mean this respectfully to ourselves here, of course. This is the issue we've got at Celtic right now, that we don't actually know what the left back, what the answer is to this issue. And when you think about it, absolutely no offence to Greg Taylor, but Greg Taylor is not a number 1 pick at left back for Glasgow Celtic. He is not European ready, in my eyes, for Champions League football sort of thing. He's not the calibre we need. He's a solid player and he's a dependable backup, but we most certainly need somebody much better than him at left back as a first choice. Yet here we are, and 2 managers after Ange and now Rodgers, who are persistent with him, where he worked well under Ange because he fitted a certain style, but Burnaby didn't fit him because Burnaby wasn't the style for an Ange footballer. He wasn't an inverted fullback at all. Burnaby's more like a Rodgers fullback, but he's not very good. But Greg Taylor's not a Rodgers kind of fullback because we already know that from the Neil Lennon times, that Greg Taylor doesn't do traditional fullback in the sense he's just not very good. But invert him into the midfield a little bit, and he is actually not too bad. So we're kind of square pegs, round holes, and all this kind of stuff, trying to fix this left back problem without actually getting anybody in of just real bloody quality, just to take that position by the scruff of its neck and say, it's mine, Taylor, love you and all that, but you're going to play back up to whoever it is that happens to be. It's a bit of a mess, and it's a bloody annoying that we're now in the 29th of January and we've still not fixed it in 2 windows under this manager.
I can agree with you a bit with the Greg Taylor, but could you flip it and go, well, these managers still keep playing them? We say Postecoglou's a great manager, we play, but then I agree. Who else? I mean, I've just slated Burnaby, so I've not actually put a good case for him to displace him. But then I suppose we might get into that. That maybe goes back to recruitment in the sense that you're spending about 3.5 million on a left back that not necessarily displacing Taylor, but isn't even challenging him. That's an argument for a different day, I guess.
Would we say that given the money spent, I'm going off on a tangent here, given the money that was spent on him, could we argue that Burnaby is, I mean, he didn't have many faux pas in the transfer market, Ange, but would we say that he's perhaps Ange's biggest flop in his time at Celtic, transfer-wise?
Possibly. I'm trying to think.
There's a couple.
There was obviously loan signings like Abelgard that didn't work out, and
they were
Ideguchi and stuff. But Ideguchi was, he didn't exactly break the bank. But I just thought, given the money that was spent on him,
Tony, for the money spent on him, probably. Is he the worst player that we brought in under Ange? Probably not, but that's not a great achievement in itself. But for the value we spent, he's probably the biggest waste.
Yeah, and obviously, I'm sure Stephen's favourite, Mr. James McCarthy. To be fair to him, he's correct in that. Right? We could never understand the 4-year contract thing. I mean, he was a guy that I suppose fitted the we need bodies in bill at that point, but to offer him a 4-year contract when he hadn't played football in over at least I think like a year and a half, 2 years was crazy. But yeah, I digress. As we were kind of all agreement in there, boys, it was a lacklustre display on Saturday. But Franny, I think one of and of course there is a bit of a, the whole sort of atmosphere around the club at the minute is, again, disjointed, being charitable at best. But one of the things I think everyone can agree on, and again, this is something that I don't think any of us will be able to put our finger on, is the fact that the current state of Celtic's pitch is appalling. It really is bad, considering the fact that, this I think the term for it's a deso surface. It costs, multi-million pound investment. It was at the request of Brendan in his first season round, and when I was doing the tour one time, it was in the pre-season after Brendan had left, the one leading up to what then became the COVID season. And the tour guide was telling me that they'd only had the first phase of it complete, and then he says it isn't until year 2 because I don't know the whole science behind it, but it's a sort of hybrid, isn't it? It's like artificial grass and real grass, and it's all banded together, so to speak. The idea being that you get this sort of bowling green-like surface, which all sounds great in theory, but I just think, this isn't the first. It was the same this time last season as well. And I think Celtic's ground staff are renowned as some of the best, but you look at the pitches down in England, the same type of surface with the same type of investment in them. It doesn't rain in Glasgow, I would argue, any more or less than anywhere else in the UK, but for whatever reason, it just isn't holding up. And to say that beforehand it was like something that you would see at Glastonbury on a wet weekend. There's a lot of things that can be argued aren't good enough at the minute at Celtic, but I think that's one where everyone's singing for the same hymn sheet. It's really not great at all.
Nah, it's not. But then, we have had fucking horrendous weather the last few weeks. Could that be a major factor? It probably is a big issue. Is it just for me? The pitch won't help the way you play, but the way I'm looking at it is we're picking on the pitch because it's just for me another sign of just where Celtic seem to be now as a club. Nothing seems to be getting done, and it feels like we're just picking on anything that we can pick on. It's like, well, fucking pitch was shite. We know. It's the winter. We've actually had about 3 storms following each other. God knows how much rains must have fell. Played football on it. It's just, I don't know the nick of any other parks round about in Scotland. Somebody might tell me they're a lot better. For me, the pitch is just moaning for moaning's sake now. In the sense,
do you think it's a bit like the Man United fans that moan about the leaking roof? You think it's just if we were performing well, probably nobody would be complaining about the leaking roof at Old Trafford. It's just for me, it feels like I do agree that it probably should be better. It should certainly look better if it's this hybrid pitch that all the best play for and use. It probably should be looking better. So maybe that's just a conversation they need to have with the green staff. Are they doing what they need to do to properly protect the pitch? For me, it just feels it's a sign of where Celtic seem to be right now, that we're actually moaning about the state of the pitch. Fair enough. What about yourself, Anthony? I don't know if you've got any green fingers, how to know how the technology of it all works, but it's just something. It's something that me and my dad always say to each other, almost as a joke. At the start of the season, we'll go, pitch is looking great, but we're definitely not just saying that now. Yeah, it's a fair point, Stephen. That's why I was saying it's not just Scotland, but the rest of the UK. But that's the thing, they've spent this money on it, but it doesn't seem to be coming up trumps.
Yeah, I've no answer for it at all. I would need to know more about last year as well. If it cut up as well last year, this time, is it just the time of year? Unfortunately for me, I was not in the Glasgow area this time last year, so I don't know how cold it got. If it was the same as the last couple of weeks, as Franny says, maybe that is playing a part. But if it's top range pitch and grass and all the hybrid stuff, if it's the same what the EPL guys are playing at the top end of theirs, then there really shouldn't be any reason why this isn't keeping the way it should be, because it's all working fine down there. And there's a few degrees temperature difference. Yeah, we might have frozen over a bit more in Glasgow this last few weeks than they did down in London and the likes. Mm-hmm. But we're Celtic, we're hoarding 70 odd million pound in the bank sort of thing. Surely we can afford a couple of tarpaulins to cover the grass and keep it looking good. If you're going to pay the money on a top end pitch, pay the staff to maintain it.
Well, that's the like you were asking about last season. I remember we played Greenock Morton in the third round of the Cup last year, and I wasn't actually at the game that day, but we were watching it on the telly, and it was looking very similar to what it is at the moment. And then the following week we played Kilmarnock in the League Cup semi-final at Hampden, and Ange, really criticised the Hampden pitch heavily. And it was one of those rare times when we were on the show on the Monday going, that's probably something we probably shouldn't highlight too much, because we're, given the state of ours, But like you say, it might be just this time of year. But like you say, I don't see many waterlogged pitches down in England either. And the whole point I was under the impression of was that this was going to be like a sort of Premier League-esque surface, but it's certainly far from that at the moment. But hopefully the state of the pitch improves and the state of the performances improve with it. Fran, in terms of the match itself, there's probably not much else to but one other point I suppose was we got a snippet of one new signing in the January window so far. Nicholas Kuhn came on sort of midway through the second half. He started on the left, ended on the right. Couple of decent touches. I wouldn't say there was anything spectacular in it, but nothing too bad either. There was one great play where he got round the Ross County keeper and put a cross in, but the County keeper, fair play to him, was at full stretch and plucked it out of the air. So yeah, it's probably too early to make sort of any massive judgments on him, but it's always good when you get the first glimpse of a new signing off the bench.
As Anthony, there's no denying that. It's always good to see him coming on. I mean, I'll probably give him a bigger cheer than I intended to, because when he was getting warmed up, it just looked like Mikey Johnson for a distance. So I was sitting thinking, we've got the new guy on the bench, and I turned and said to Jed, I went, that tells you all you need to know about the new guy if Mikey Johnson's coming on a forum. But obviously I was getting to, I was proven wrong. The guy done some no bad wee things, had some good wee touches and stuff. Dug out a couple of nice wee crosses, but you're not going to get a feel for the guy after Saturday's game, Anthony. It was a horrible game to come on. By the time he came on, I wouldn't say the game was flat, but Celtic certainly won in full flow. When Narofka came on, he came on kind of. Narofka, I thought, I felt the centre halves. Jed said it as well. The two centre halves, CCV and Scales, they seemed to get up to a certain point and stop and would not go by that bit. Whereas Narofka just thought, well, I'll just keep going, and played some neat passes and kind of broke the lines. And off at one time, I think Kuhn got in and dug it in his cross. It's definitely their doors. I'm not saying we've got a player in our hands, but I'm not going to sit and write the guy off after a 20-minute cameo or whatever it was on Saturday.
That's it. I mean, I think we've got some massive games coming up, Anthony. Obviously, Aberdeen away, Hibs away, Scottish Cup. You're looking for him to probably feature a hell of a lot more in those games and the games after that as well. What was your sort of initial take on him, brought from the bench?
Much the same as Branny there. It wasn't long enough really to get a full judgment on him. I'm going to say something that's going to make it sound really, really harsh. See, when we've got a manager telling us that we're only going to sign real quality players when they're available and he's not going to accept anything else, I expect a quality signing to come in, even for that 25-minute, half hour that he had. And for us not to sit here and go, it wasn't terrible, it wasn't great, we'll need to give him a tip. I want to have sat here and go, 25-minute cameo, that got my arse off my seat. He looks good. I'm excited to see him next week. I'm no. And maybe it's this kind of thing as we're talking about a wee bit amongst ourselves. Maybe it's just this thing at the club that everything's just negative just now. It's all just seeping into my mindset. But that's no real quality. He looks no better than the likes of your Palmers or Abada. He looks all right. I'm excited enough to say, let's see what he does for the next few games. But I'm not sitting here going thinking he's changing this. He's the match winner for us. He's going to take us forward. There's no real flash to it, but there's no real shiteness to it either. So I think my mood to it is just, all right. Another one that could go either way here.
Maybe a bit of magic against Aberdeen or something like that could, change the mind. But I know what you mean. As I say, in terms of the fact that there wasn't anything too spectacular to start off. Yeah, it's very much a case of wait and see how he gets on from here. And obviously the fact that he's got a bit of competition on the wings as well. You obviously have Abada back now. You've got Louis Palma, who's been in the team pretty much since he signed. And obviously the likes of Dyson Maeda as well when he comes back from the Asian Cup. So if he wants to nail down a regular place, he's going to have to. He is going to have to hit the ground running as quickly as possible. And that probably, Franny, feeds into the wider points. I say in terms of the match itself, there wasn't really much else to discuss. Of course, there was the two missed penalties, which, it's beyond belief. I don't know who it was that put it up on the chat earlier. There's a brilliant comment. It seems we miss penalties the way Joe Biden misses steps. That's an absolutely brilliant analogy. It's so frustrating. I don't have any statistical analysis to back up my theory, and it's maybe just personal preference, but I absolutely cannot stick these staffed run-ups before a penalty. It just, the minute I see it happening, I just switch off. I stormed out and went down to the queue for a cup of tea after the first one. It wasn't until I was queuing that the steward, we had it up on the telly that we were going to get another one. And like you said, didn't really feel like there was any expectation for anyone in the ground that it was going to go in. It was almost like, well, he'll hit it, he'll miss it, and then we can hopefully get a second one, score a second goal quite quickly after it. But yeah, we really do need to sort stuff out with the penalties. But for me, Franny, it kind of fed into what kind of happened at the end of the match. Like you say, there was a strange atmosphere throughout the course of the second half, and there's bits of it that I can understand. There's bits of it that I was frustrated with. I was absolutely fuming coming out the ground on Saturday. And I'm not trying to dismiss anyone's valid views on it. Maybe you can file it under birthday care pish, as the boys on Still Game would call it. But I've been brought up in a very successful period at Celtic. But I'm young, old enough that I can remember the latter end of their dominance in the mid-90s, and then of course into 99, 2000, etc. So we've always seen successful Rangers sides. We've been up against successful Rangers sides, and we've had poor Celtic sides, of course we have. But I can't remember on too many occasions, if it's ever happened, where we've actually even booing the team in any sense. And I know people are saying, it was maybe more at the board or whatever. I don't know if I subscribe to that. I felt that the reaction on Saturday was very much to do with the actual performance on the pitch. But that's for others to make their minds up on. I just think that I think the argument that the players have got to do better, absolutely. I thought the performance was really lacklustre on Saturday. I do think the manager perhaps got to wisen up a wee bit, and perhaps in the post-match comments and stuff, perhaps not give as much away. I certainly think, I think sometimes people think me and Wally and Ross are, get paid up members of the pro Lowell Brigade, which and you certainly know me, I very much am. But I find myself more often than not these days on the side of trying to find a bit of balance in the argument. But the accusation that they could and should do more, I totally hear all of that as well. But for me, I think the fans have got to do it a bit. Have got to raise the game a little bit here as well. And the reason I say that is because I've seen it more and more happen in European games the last couple of seasons, where, of course, we've been apprehensive about. We've taken a few heavy doings in Europe. You think of PSG, Barcelona, teams like that. That where the minute the ball gets over the halfway line in Europe, and you can put it down to, it's a European night. Maybe guys have come over from Ireland, have been on the flight or the ferries, and people have been gathering in the pubs all afternoon and whatever. But there's always a bit more apprehensive and tension in the European nights, and because we want to avoid some of the poor results that we've had. But I've found that more and more this season, almost sneaking into the actual domestic games as well. It's almost like we're trying to prophesise our own doom. Of course, we've lost a lot of late goals under Ange last season as well, where games that we should have killed off earlier that we didn't. And I can certainly think it happening a couple of times under Lenny as well. And sometimes we've ended up going up the park and getting out of jail, but other times we have dropped points as well. But it just seems to be, for me at the moment, the minute, if we're not 4-0 up after 15 minutes, or if the players are deciding to play the way that Brendan likes to play, where it is a little bit more calm, measured, side to side, I appreciate it's maybe not as eye-catching as Ange. However, there was plenty of days at the office under Ange where there was a bit of that could have got football stopped as well. For me, I don't think this mass anxiety and mass panic every time that it's 1-0 and there's a misplaced pass or whatever, I don't think that necessarily helps things either. So whilst I can understand where some of it's coming from, for me, I just think booing the team, I think that sends off a terrible message for those that wish us ill. We're giving them all the ammunition they want, and I'm just interested to see. I know they'll probably have different opinions tonight, and that's absolutely what this show is all about. So I'll come to you first, Franny, and then Anthony, you can give us your own thoughts on Saturday's atmosphere, but just the wider malaise at the club at the moment as well.
I think it's Saturday's sort of a reaction after it. I think it is a lot to do with the wider malaise at the club, Anthony. I mean, I'm with you in the sense that I don't see the benefits of booing the team, was it booing the performance and all that. I didn't see the point in all that. I can remember a couple of games back when I had a season ticket, I did witness it sometimes at half time. After maybe a poor 45 minutes, you were down out, and I was just like, I didn't get that. But equally, I find myself going, well, you're paying good money. You're not going to get a sit down with the board or anything like that. So when are you going to get to really voice your opinion? You could shout going, fucking sack the board, do this, do that, but that's not going to get heard. A boo is like, it's heard louder than you verbally shouting. You're sort of how discontent you are with the club. And I think it's came for when Rodgers came in. I mean, I'm not massive on the board. I'm probably not didn't pay enough attention to them to really be keeping an eye on them and all that. I do think there is a sort of element of job for the boys, certainly when you start looking into Mark Lowell's sort of his CV, if you like. It's not a very good one for the job that he's got there now. I just think there's a lot of stuff coming up. Like, obviously, Brendan Rodgers coming back for me was absolutely amazing. I mean, but I think there was also a section of the fan base weren't happy with him coming back. And so I think it's kind of came for that appointment. It's just kind of started for there. Performances didn't start great. I think we all thought, myself included, all thought Brendan Rodgers was got to, I think we expected, certainly myself, I was on record as saying I think we'll break our transfer record a bit out of default in the summer, just the way the market was going. Brendan Rodgers saying he's coming back to improve us in Europe. Suppose in hindsight you could argue he did because we got 4 points. It's an improvement, but we're still out. I think there's just there's been a lot of, could you say mixed? I don't know if mixed message is right, because Brendan Rodgers on one hand was saying he was happy he signed off on all the transfer dealings at the summer, but yet only plays Palma. I know Nafrovsky's coming in, but it's only Palma that's getting played out in nine or even 10. That Phillips got a couple of games. I'm not really want to chuck Nat Phillips in it because he was an emergency loan. We had to get somebody in. But out the 9 that came in, Palma's the only real regular. We've actually got looking like we're getting rid of Lagerbielke, who was one of our most expensive summer signings. I just think recruitment's been, after, certainly, I maybe wasn't as biased as guys like you and Willie and Ross when it came to recruitment, but certainly now we're sort of 6-7 months down the line, you can sit and go, well, recruitment's been pretty shite in the summer. And then you come into January, Brendan Rodgers again, talking about quality. I want quality. We need 3 or 4 guys in. 3 days left and we've got 1 guy in. And the rumours aren't very... I'm one for Twitter and rumours and jumping on. Even I'm struggling to find anything on there. Obviously, you're getting Sidney Van Hooydonk, but I just think there's hunters round about it. It just seems there's a lot of discontent and frustration round about we're getting Rodgers back, and it just seems like there's some desperate for him to fail. The folk that were really happy for him coming back, it feels like he's maybe came, for me, it feels like he's came back and he's 10, almost what Lennon done second time round, just 10 what he was given. And it's just, I didn't understand. I do believe Celtic are trying to bring folk in these last few days, but it also feels a wee bit panicked a wee bit in the fact that they're doing it, doesn't it? Or is it they're trying to be more measured to maybe try and gain them the benefit of the doubt? The summer window, they've admitted, we kind of made an arse of that. We need to try and be a wee bit measured now. I just didn't ken it. Just there's so much just feels off with the fan base. That they can't seem to find 2 fans sort of in the same page now, Anthony. It's just, and I think that just was a lot of that just fed into Saturday and was a lot to do with the boos, in my opinion. It was just some probably booing the performance, some booing the board, some just a general mood with the sort of the season's going. It's weird, absolutely weird. Now.
I know, obviously, we weren't at the Hearts game because that was the night of our Christmas party. But obviously, guys that were at it were saying that it was pretty bad, Anthony. But I don't think it got as bad as that on Saturday. But I suppose the fact that we were winning 1-0 rather than losing 2-0 probably had a part in that. What's your kind of? Do you think it is a mixture of all things, or do you think it was just purely on the result, or do you think it was purely at the board, or do you think it's all these little factors that are making a imperfect storm?
Everything. Again, let's go back to what Franny brought up originally in the podcast earlier. It's this kind of everything comes together and this bad feeling that we've all seemed to have. Some of us are trying to be more positive than others about it. We're trying to benefit of the doubt sometimes, which is fair. But there's a lot of bad feeling and bad vibes going around the club. It stems usually from, in my opinion, from one guy, Peter Lawwell himself. And things just don't feel right again this year. We're not as bad as we were under the going for the 10 season. Most certainly, performance-wise, we're not as bad as the 90s, of course, as some people kind of remind us and tell us that we're entitled for any bad vibes and bad feelings that we have towards how the club's run. But I think the boos at the weekend, for me, they definitely felt more. This is the last game of the transfer window. This is the last time they had a chance to voice their opinion, and it felt like it was more directed at the club and at the board rather than the players and the manager. But I think the players and the manager specifically has probably taken it a lot bit more personal than it was Doesn't help the fact that everybody, including the players and managers, can all admit that the performance wasn't that great either. So it's probably a bit of everything, but I think overall for most of the fans, the booze at the weekend was definitely about the transfer window and about how the clubs ran. Talking about recruitment, I'm not going to delve too deep into pretty much what Franny said and the general feeling that I think we're all on board that the recruitment is piss. The club's not in a great place. There's people running this club who probably shouldn't be running the club anymore. But there's a point that I want to bring up. 2 points I want to actually bring up. One is, who is the scouting team? I think it was maybe Boise asked this one in the chat as well. Who is the scouting team? Who do we have? I've got 3 names for you because it's really fucking hard to pin this down. You can't go to the Celtic website and find
I
scouting
couldn't
teams.
tell you them. I couldn't, if you had a gun in my head and told me to pick them out, I couldn't do it.
I got to the Celtic wiki page one time the other day, and they had a list of about 8 or 9 people, one of which was Tosh McKinley, and they also still had Ange Postecoglou as a manager and Nicky Hammond as a director of sports or something, so well out of date. But I've got 3 names who, if you go to the individual LinkedIn page of all things, they still state that they work for Celtic. 3 names. We'll start with Mark Lawwell. His job title is the head of first team scouting and recruitment. We've got Jay Leferry, who has been here for a few years, still here apparently. His title, head of scouting operations. And then we've got a guy who signed for us last March, Joe Dudgeon. His LinkedIn page, his title is lead first team scout. Can anybody tell me what a lead first team scout is, what a head of scouting operations, and what the difference is between those two and a head of first team scouting or recruitment? Because all
Sounds
three
a
of them
bit like the
sound
guy that makes the
job.
tea for the guy that makes the coffee, doesn't it?
That's the same job for 3 different people. No wonder the recruitment is piss poor. No wonder nobody knows who we're dealing with or who's making the negotiations or phone calls or whatever's going on. That's the same job for 3 people. And yet I can't find anybody else who's an actual scout going out to actually scout people. Which brings me to my second point. I'll make it very, very brief. We let Carl Starfelt leave because he wanted to be near his missus who went to Portugal, so he went to the north of Spain just to be across the border. Fair play, we've all seen the pictures. Which is fair. Player wants to move on, it's fair. Seagrass, you want to move to Australia? Let's just, on you go. Let's just move it along. It's fair that happens. But why did we allow Carl Starfelt to leave? And we actually let an agent tell us who we're going to sign next in Lager Bielka, who's now on his way out the door 6 months later. Did we even scout them? Did we even do due diligence? Did anybody check this guy out? Or did we literally just take the word of a scout and went, aye, okay then. Of course the scout's going to tell us he's got the next Starfelt coming up for us. Of course he is. He's kind of shit though, isn't he?
It's a strange one as well, because I don't actually, but obviously again, I think the original signing in the summer was Navrocki. He was meant to be CCV's partner, or you know, but then when Starfelt left, it was kind of like, oh, shit, well, we're going to need another one. And then obviously there was the whole injury crisis, which ended up getting Nat Phillips as well. And I think that's where, as I say, I don't necessarily dislike Lager Bielka, but it was just the fact that both him and Navrocki came in at the same time, got injured very, very quickly as well. That when they came back, obviously he was fouled in the build-up in the Rangers game, but I think apart from that, he done pretty well. But then, of course, there was the red card in Feyenoord, and ever since then, Brendan's he's not been backwards and coming forwards about how he feels that his attitude, etc., needs to improve. Even after he came on and scored the winning goal against Feyenoord, I don't know if this has always been like a little thing that Brendan did, because I remember in his first season when Eric Sviatchenko started as one of his first choice centre halves and didn't really do anything wrong. I felt he acquitted himself very well the first half of the season. But the first half, a game that we actually ended up going on to win 2-1 at Ibrox, he was at fault, or partly at fault, for Rangers opening the scoring. I think he misplaced the pass that ended up getting latched onto by, somebody that probably plays in the English third division now, and they crossed over and Kenny Miller scored. But it was like, I think Sviatchenko played 1 game for Celtic after that, and it was almost as if that was, and at the time I thought, my God, this is so ruthless, because I quite like Sviatchenko. But then the amount of times Didrik Boyata seemed to get away with doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. I just thought, is this maybe something Brendan does? He just maybe makes an example of one player and that's it. But I suppose we'll never know. And as I say, we certainly won't be able to kind of have all the answers in one podcast, Anthony. But yeah, it's a strange one. As I tell you, I couldn't name you the Celtic scout. You know more than me, but actually being able to name some names. But I couldn't have, with a gun to my head, couldn't either give you a name, let alone a face. But as I say, we've got a little bit of time left. There's 3 days, like you say. The only real rumour that I've at least a little bit heard of is Sidney van Hooijdonk was mentioned. Of course, he would be Costa, unless it was a loan with an option to buy, he would represent a bit of an outlay, I would say. Is he the type of player? I don't know enough about him, apart from, of course, he's much more famous father, but is he someone that you've seen in any way, shape or form? Is he something like that kind of physical? Is he built the same way as his dad, or does he play the same way? Do you think he's someone that could fit the bill?
I don't know if he plays the same way. He's certainly got the start. I think if you go by Wikipedia or whatever it is, he's 6'3". The video clips, he looks a big enough lad. He's almost, the video clips makes him look a wee bit like in the mould of, dare I say, Giakoumakis, but probably a wee bit faster, probably not as clinical. I mean, you just need to look at his Bologna career. I don't think that makes for great reading, but obviously had a spell over in Holland with Heerenveen last season, where I think it was 16 or 19 goals he scored. So that's a good record to go off. He's 24-year-old. It is the only real link that seems to be. I mean, we're crying out for a striker, and that's not to have a pop at Kyogo, because like Jed told me to watch for it on Saturday. Kyogo makes so many runs and nobody passes to him, and you're like, I know focal point to his numbers, but it feels like Kyogo just stops making the runs because he can't be arsed in it anymore. Because he's like, well, what's the point? So, on one argument, it's like, well, we need a striker to help Kyogo out, but Kyogo's not getting the service. But then maybe a bigger, tall striker in the mould of Sidney van Hooijdonk, who by accounts looks like he could look after himself. Maybe it allows you to then put higher crosses in, whereas there's no point swinging a ball in for Kyogo to try and win the header. It's just not going to do it at the end of the day. So I suppose Van Hooijdonk would, without knowing too much about the guy, would probably give us that option. A wee bit of me, I would just want the deal to happen because it's Pierre's laddie. Just a wee bit of reminiscing and stuff. I mean, hopefully he's not got his dad's fucking attitude. He'll not be here for long, I don't think. But if he's got anything, if he's got half his dad's ability, he'll be a top player. But it seems the only one that's sort of a gathering pace. Simply, it's one that's obviously we're linked to him in the summer. I think it's Anthony Joseph has even said that we've been linked to him. We've made contact maybe as far back as November. There was mixed messages coming out for Bologna. He's available. He's not available. They've went and signed a striker. I think it was Willie or John on the chat had shared something about how I've actually heard the audio for the Italian football at the weekend, and the commentator actually says that he's not in the squad due to I can't remember exactly the words, but something like due to an impending transfer or an imminent transfer to Celtic. And then I was reading Twitter the day, fun enough, Anthony, and apparently his team, I mean, it's sources from a Bologna newspaper, apparently, are trying to are exploiting the idea of Celtic. So it seems, I say, Willie's probably sitting turning his grave down and just been like, these guys falling for it all again, all the rumours. But it seems all the evidence is there that it's one we're trying to get done as Sidney van Hooijdonk. I've heard the boy Tommy Conway, I believe his name is, for Bristol City. I think he's a Scotland under 21 international. Peter Grant at the weekend, I'm led to believe, said that will never happen, which I didn't get why a commentator for the team is sitting saying, "Well, we'll get a signing done." It's like, wait, you on about? Or what does he know? Does he know something we don't?
Something we don't.
So it's a strange one. it'll be an absolute brave and bold move if we don't bring anybody, if we don't bring any signings in by the next 3 days. I appreciate it's got to be hard. I didn't want us just bringing folk in just because we want bodies. They need to be guys that you generally think are got to improve the team. I just think it's a massive and risk for the board if we don't bring anybody in. You're really asking a lot of Rodgers. I mean, I think Rodgers will manage to do it, win the league with that team. It's no the world's worst team. We're in a no bad position. It needs freshened up, but that team needs help. The players need help. The manager needs help. And as much as some folk like to slate the board and things like that, they can't be that stupid to realise. I know that there's obviously the whole PLC thing where they're on to dividends and shares and stuff. They're risking a lot of cash if they didn't invest in this team over the next couple of days. For me, it's a massive risk if they didn't bring somebody in. And as I say, if it's Sidney Van Hooijdonk, let's hope he's anywhere. If he's half as decent as that, we'll have a decent player in their hands.
Absolutely. And Anthony, just your own thoughts on that, and but is he somebody you would take? Is he somebody you've paid any attention to? You signed him on Football Manager at all? And any good?
I don't think I have actually signed him a Football Manager yet in any of the last couple of seasons. I'll be honest, I'm Googling right now on the side and trying to figure out more about him because I don't know enough about him. I was under the impression he actually only just recently signed for Bologna, but it turns out, according to Transfer Market, he signed for them back in 2021 summer. So he's been there for a while. His loan deal was to Heerenveen in the Dutch league, and obviously, as Franny says, his record there looks a lot more impressive than it does for Bologna in Serie A. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes a player has, a good club he can play well for, and sometimes a bad club he can play shite for. We've seen it with our own players. I mean, you look at Timo Pukki, kind of shite for us, but he done no bad at Norwich, didn't he? I'm not against him. There's a romantic side of it that he is Pierre's boy. You want to see somebody come through. There's a little bit we would still take Jordan Larson, but I don't think either are probably the right answer. Well, yeah. What gets me though is a quick Google will show you that we were linked with Sidney Van Hooijdonk in some capacity of a rumour back in summertime. And we were most certainly linked to him in November time. And we were definitely linked a few weeks ago. If this was a signing that Celtic wanted to do, why was it not done already? Rodgers came out before the window opened and said he wanted 4 quality players in this window. Then it's a case of, we'll bring quality in if it's available to us. We won't sign anybody who's not the right quality. That's where my argument for Kuhn comes in. Is he the right quality? Because he didn't show it enough in a small cameo appearance, obviously, but more to be seen. But if Celtic wanted a striker this window, why did we not sign him? Why we waited this long to the point where it actually now looks like Sidney Van Hooijdonk's staff are trying to get him to come to us rather than us trying to get him? If that makes it. It's very, very poorly done, this transfer. If this comes off, it's definitely a panic buy, a last-minute crap. We need to do something here. It's a bit too little, too late. But I hope it's not. I hope it's enough to see us through. But it feels a bit too little, too late, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think one of the sort of, and against that word again, the optics of it don't look great. And I think that's what's frustrated a lot of supporters as well. And of course, there has been some good, the fact of they knocked back O'Reilly, CCV signed a new deal. But I think supporters were looking for more than that in this window. I think the manager himself was as well, and I think that's where some of the frustration lies. In that sense, I definitely can see it. As I say, I had personally set myself up. I didn't think he was ever going to swap Joe Hart in this window, and I kind of hadn't really expected him to change, sign another left back. My thing was always an extra backup striker for Kyogo. I always thought that was the thing we had to, to really focus on, and whether that be Sidney Van Hooijdonk or someone closer to home remains to be seen. But I'm certainly of the opinion that it would be a good idea to get some business in this window. But I'm sure, boys, that the guys will be talking about that very much on the double pivot on Wednesday night. And then, of course, if there is any deadline day deals to be done. I'm sure perhaps some of us could come on here and finish things off on Thursday as well. But in terms of tonight's show, that kind of wraps everything up this week for the Monday night show. Have you enjoyed it?
It's been good. It was like a wee bit of therapy there, Anthony.
Absolutely. Try our best, Franny. We try our best.
Definitely feels good when you can get your voice out there and just kind of rant a little bit in a bit more of a productive way than bashing text messages and WhatsApp.
Absolutely. It can be a stress in itself at times, really, can't it? But again, folks, thanks to everyone for getting involved tonight. It's always great to see some new faces coming on the show and all the regulars as well. Keep watching, keep liking, keep subscribing. We appreciate all your input, and we've got hopefully a lot of talking points to come up on the midweek show, the double pivot, where the guys can, obviously I'm sure transfer talk will be a main bulk of it, but there'll be other talking points as well, not just necessarily Celtic. There's no topic off limits on the double pivot, and our usual Friday night show as well. But I'm sure if we'll be in touch if there's any updates regarding transfers as well. And all I could say to the boys is thanks again for coming on. And as much as we're in a bit of uncharted waters at the minute, just remember to look at that league table and remember we're still top, still kings, and I've got no doubt we will be come the end of the season as well. So enjoy the rest of your Monday night, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.
All the best, hail.